Welcome back to days 6, 7, and 8 of Junk Journal January. The first one I'm going to show you is day 6. The prompt was nest, and this is the quote that I found to use and that inspired my spread. The first thing I did was find the bird I wanted to use for my focal point and some packaging. You know that those strands of paper bits and stuff that you find inside like hampers and whatnot. I got a hamper at Christmas and that was inside. So I decided to use that as my nest, as well as a die cut of a wreath, but it kind of looks like a nest for me. So that is what I decided to do to use to make my nest. The first thing I did was, of course, fussy cut my little bird, and then it was time to glue everything together. After inking it all, of course, to add definition. So I just used some normal PVA glue, oh no, fabric glue, sorry, to attach the nest material, because I figured it would be a little bit stronger. I wasn't quite sure if this was paper, plastic, or what. I also decided to add a little bit of sparkle by throwing some gold thread in there, and then I just used PVA to attach the thread to the bird and put the bird in the middle of the nest. And then, of course, my die cut also got glued as much as I could in the tiny little bits and put that on. And then I put a bit of a weight on it to help it all set together. Once it was all dry, it was time to just put in the words. I got a little bit of that brown cardstock, cut it into strips, and tore up my quote into bite-sized chunks, inked the edges, glued it all together, and pretty much called that a day. Oh, you'll also see that I stamp it with day 5 because I completely skipped a day. So basically, day 5 is day 6 prompt. You'll have noticed if you watched my Gilded video that I called that day 8 when actually it was day 9. So I kind of lost track of the order of things, but I think you still get the idea anyway. Day 7 was Snowflake, and this is the quote that I chose. The page that I ended up flipping to in the journal had little foxes on it, so I decided to embrace the whole fox theme. And I do love the printables, so I try and keep them as visible as possible when I get the page spread. So I decided to put a pocket on the left side and then put the quote on the right. I got a little pocket cut out from the kit and just cut it out, inked it, and glued it down. And then I started working on the tag, which I decided to make from a tea bag that I had sewn together and dried. I made a little cluster decoration onto the tea bag using the little fox that I found in a magazine advertisement, a little scrap of the lace that I have used multiple times, and a piece of that paper doily, which to me looks like a snowflake. Once I was happy with my tag, it was time to add a little bit more interest on the page. I got my little washi tape collection out and peeled off this little golden starry type washi tape, which has a little bit of that blue and white color that we've been using throughout the journal. And I just added a strip on one side and a little piece on the other side to connect the two pages, and um, also connect those with the tag, on which you might have seen I added a tiny little gold star sticker onto. Then the next thing was to do the little snowflake dangle. And I had been saving that acetate box that we've already used previously in making the window, and it had a little snowflake on it. So, of course, I figured that would make the perfect little snowflake charm to go with my snowflake theme. So I basically just cut it out in a circle after I found one that worked. I traced around various circles until I found one that worked. And then I sanded the edges just to make it less sharp, because this hard plastic can be very, very painful if you cut yourself with it. And just poked a hole in it, threaded it onto a paper clip, and added it to the journal. The last step was to add the quote, so I did my usual. I tore it into pieces, I inked up the edges, and then I played with the arrangement until it got to the point that I liked. And again, I experimented a little bit, got a few different types of scraps out of my scrap box and everything like that. Finally settled on this piece of onion skin dyed paper that I had left in there. And I just, used that as a little bit of interest to put underneath the words of the quote. And then, of course, I added some white acrylic ink splattered across to add more of the snowy effect. And that is that page complete. Day 8 was Dream, and this is the quote that I chose. So I have gathered all my bits here. I found a little piece of a map, a world map, and decided that that would be interesting to put on as a layer to add some interest to the page and cover up some of the pages, some of the words on the book page that I'm using here. I found these little swifts in my stash and decided to use a cutout from the kit, as well as one of my oracle cards and my little tea bag snippet roll. The first thing that I decided to do was to back the oracle card this time, rather than just leaving it plain as is. I used a piece of vintage ledger paper on the back just because I liked the look, and it has a good thickness to it, so it adds a little bit more support. The next thing that I did was to see cut out our little friendly birds and fiddle around with their placement until I found the way that I would like them to be. After the birds were cut, I decided I also trimmed the edges of the little journaling card that came in the kit and backed it with ledger paper as well. I inked up my birds, and now it came the time to start playing with everything. I cut a little piece of that map and glued it down and added a little bit of gesso to the background just to kind of soften those words and blur them a bit. Used a bit of my tea bag to make a pocket, and I backed it with a little bit of old book page, which adds a little bit of text interest underneath as well as giving it a little bit more strength. Cut out my journaling card and cut out my oracle card, inked the edges, and then I played around with the idea of the placement a few times, how I wanted to do it, where I wanted to put them. And eventually I did decide where I wanted them to go. You'll see here I'm just playing with the layout a bit and finally made my choice. So I glued down the pocket, played with my birds until I found them the right way, prepared my text, inked it, and then decided on my final positioning for the layout. And that's it for today's video. I hope you've enjoyed it and are having a great time taking part in Junk Journal January UK 2026. I'll see you in the next video. Happy creating. Bye bye.